Well, we have headline news to look at. It's found on page 36 in your September magazine. And what's the title of our first item, Paul?
The title is Fiddling with Foods Fuels Fears.
That's quite a mouthful.
It is.
What does that all mean?
Well, fiddling means adjusting or tampering with, changing things in a certain...
Nobody can dispute. What does it mean to dispute something, Paul?
If you dispute, then you disagree. You say that's not true.
All right, so the statement is that modern science has bestowed amazing benefits on the world in all these different areas. We have faster, cheaper, better transportation, communications, and so on. Would you agree, Paul? Nobody can dispute this?
It's true. You can't really argue with that when you look at the cell phones we have today, or the cars, or the hospitals, and the way they can put you back together. It's amazing.
Just think of what's happening right now as we speak. We're in a studio in Taipei, and students all across Taiwan and even in other parts of the world are able to listen to our teaching because of modern science and technology. It's an amazing benefit, and nobody can really argue with that. There have been tremendous benefits. We live longer, we eat better food, we have healthier lives, and we have interesting lives, partly because of these wonderful benefits of modern science. What does it mean, Phoebe, to bestow something on someone?
Well, when you bestow something on someone, you give a gift to someone. So modern technology has been able to bestow on our world faster and better transportation and other such benefits.
And we've used the word science and technology here in our discussion. Are they exactly the same, Paul?
Not exactly the same. We use them much the same often today, but science is really the study of anything, whether it be biology or technology or other things like that, and we study it by the scientific method. Technology refers specifically to innovations that we've made, human inventions that make life easier.
We could say sometimes the application of science, the use of scientific principles or knowledge in human affairs, in machines, and the things that we use in life, in business, and so on. That is technology. It's putting science to use. And so we have faster, cheaper, better transportation, communications, medical care, and much more. You could make a very long list of the benefits of modern science. And this applies to the field of food production as well. Science has had a huge impact on yields, costs, and quality. Now, Phoebe, what's the idea of yields here?
Well, the yield is how much food is produced in a season. So if your yield is small, it means you haven't produced very much of a certain crop. If your yield is large, you've produced a lot. And in other words, this paragraph is saying that food production has had a huge impact on how much food can be produced.
Science has had a huge impact. Right. Can you think of some examples of how that works, Paul? Scientific principles applied in agriculture or in food production has improved the yield, the cost, the quality of our food. What are some examples?
Well, the most obvious ways are in chemicals that kill bugs and other plants that attack the food, that attack the crops. And the other one is in fertilizers, chemicals that is put on the fields that help the plants grow more quickly and more healthily.
Okay, two very good examples. We know that the United States is the most productive country in the world in terms of agriculture. The agricultural output in the United States is huge, and a large reason for that is the use of science and technology in agriculture, from the machines that are used to fertilizers to pesticides and all of these things. It sounds like almost a dream world, but there can be problems with some of the ways that we try to manage food production. And going over to the third column now, we see the final sentence in this paragraph, but recent findings suggest that some high-tech animal and plant husbandry techniques cause unintended and unwelcome consequences. Recent findings would be what, Paul? People seeing things on the ground, finding things?
No, they're talking about scientific studies. Studies of the foods that we eat, the kind of chemicals, the kind of processes they go through.
Okay, so when there is a study, a scientific study of something, the results can be called the findings. What did we find when we studied this subject? And what do these findings suggest, Phoebe?
Well, it suggests that some of this high-tech agricultural techniques may cause unintended and unwelcome consequences. So in other words, even though they've produced good effects, they might also have caused some things that we didn't intend to happen.
Okay, not every high-tech, modern technique is beneficial necessarily, and we need to be very careful about what techniques we use to improve our crops. What about animal and plant husbandry? That's a bit of an unusual word, and I don't think this has anything to do with husbands and wives, does it, Paul?
No, it doesn't. It means farming. It's a word that's not used as much in modern English, but it is still in use, basically just saying farming.
Okay, so there's animal farming and plant farming, and high-tech techniques are being used with sometimes unintended and unwelcome consequences. There's even a law, kind of a principle of the way things work. It's called the law of unintended consequences. And when you do something, almost every time, something you don't expect is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's unintended consequences. And sometimes these are unwelcome as well. Yvonne, do you have any comments?
好，我们回到这个 title， 讲到这个 fiddling with foods 这个字 ，to fiddle 这边是指它有做一些改变，或者是调整，或者是让它变得更好。然后 feel 这边是造成或者是促成的意思。然后到下面第18行 to dispute 就是争论。20行 to bestow 是给予或赠予的意思。中间这个 column 21行 yields 这边是指农作物的生产量。到第3个 column 第3行 husbandry 是指务农或者是耕种。然后下面第4行 unintended 就是没有预料的。第5行 consequences 后果结果。
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. If you read the newspaper at all, you'll see from time to time some kind of public argument about a new technique in producing food or in doing things to make food, to increase yields of crops or to kill bacteria in food and various things. People are concerned and worried about what's happening to food as it's being produced with the use of science and technology. Now we're going to see one example of one of these techniques that could have unwelcome, unintended consequences. Look in the third column, line 6. Paul, can you read that paragraph, please?
One such technique is to administer antibiotics to livestock and poultry. The intention is to encourage faster growth and fight disease. Some of these antibiotics are of the same class as those used to treat humans. A newly published study reveals that a few bacteria often survive the antibiotics and become resistant to them. They also become resistant to the related human medicine. When, through contaminated water or food, these drug-resistant bacteria infect humans, the standard treatments have no effect.
That sounds really scary. Well, let's review what's happening here. One technique of animal husbandry is to administer antibiotics to livestock and poultry. Phoebe, what's the difference between livestock and poultry?
Well, livestock is usually referring to animals like cattle or sheep, and poultry is mostly bird types, chickens, geese.
Okay, so livestock we could say are perhaps four-legged farm animals. Poultry are birds. And so farmers administer antibiotics to these livestock and poultry. And why do they do this, Paul?
Because it helps them grow faster and avoid diseases.
Okay. And the interesting thing is that some of these drugs that are used, the antibiotics, are the same or of the same class. They're similar to drugs that are used to treat humans. Now, did you know that, Phoebe, before reading headline news?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm surprised because you would think livestock and humans would have very different antibiotics.
Because perhaps the germs, the bacteria that affect livestock and humans could be different, but I think in some cases they're very similar. Mm-hmm. And so the same types of drugs are used, and what's the problem because of that, Paul?
Well, usually some of the bacteria, some of the germs, the things that the drugs are trying to fight survive. And when that happens, it means that they develop a resistance to those antibiotics. So later, when the same antibiotics are used to fight that disease, they don't have any effect.
Okay, and this is revealed by a newly published study. They find that a few bacteria often survive the antibiotic treatment. Even though these livestock receive lots of antibiotics, some bacteria survive. And because they have survived, they become resistant to the antibiotics. And then their offspring, as they reproduce, they will all be resistant as well. And because they're resistant to the animal antibiotics, they're also resistant to what, Phoebe?
The related human medicine.
Okay. So drug-resistant bacteria are dangerous. That's a scary thought, to have germs out there that we can't fight, that our medicine is ineffective against. And how can people be affected then, Paul, by these bacteria that normally are associated with animals?
Well, they can get them through water or through food that has been infected with these bacteria, and then the drugs will not be of any use to them.
Okay, so if, because of water, contaminated water or food, if people become infected with the bacteria, they feel sick, they go to the doctor or the hospital. At the hospital, they receive the normal treatment for that type of bacteria. It does no good. It doesn't help them to get well. The standard treatments have no effect, and then the doctors have to find some other special kind of drug to treat these people. And this is becoming a serious problem. Yvonne, any comments?
我们从第7行看，讲到这边 to administer， 它这边是指运用的意思。然后同一行 antibiotics 就是指抗生素，后面讲到这个 livestock 是指家畜，那 poultry 就是家禽的意思。到14行 to reveal 就是显现、显示。16行 resistant 是指有抗拒性的，那这边讲到是 resistant to the medicine 就是抗药性的。19行 contaminated 就是受到污染的。
Thank you, Yvonne. Paul, does it surprise you to learn that farmers commonly give antibiotics to their livestock and poultry?
No, it doesn't. I grew up in an area where there is a lot of farming, and some of my relatives are involved in farming. And as I hear stories, it's amazing. Many of the animals that are raised now never really even go outside. They're kept in buildings their entire lives. They're fed very special mixtures of food that have a lot of medicines and vitamins and things added in. So this doesn't really surprise me at all.
So farming, especially in the developed world, is becoming it's becoming a business.
Oh, very much so.
Very efficient, high-tech. We call it agribusiness, the way that farms are run these days. And the whole goal of this kind of farming is efficiency, profit, making the most money for the least amount of investment. And one of the consequences of this way of farming is that animals suffer perhaps, and we, the consumers of food, might also suffer, as this latest study shows. Phoebe, how do you feel about this, the thought that you might become contaminated with bacteria that drugs cannot treat?
Well, I think it's a very scary thought because if things go on like this, we really don't know what we're eating sometimes. We don't know how we can catch these, and we can't prevent any of these diseases. And the thing about this food technology is that people like to buy what the farmers are putting out. You know, we want better beef, we want bigger vegetables.
And we want it cheaper.
Right. And so this is exactly what the consumers are asking for. But every time you fiddle with food, you just don't know what may happen if you fiddle with nature.
I remember years ago talking with a man from Washington State in the U.S. He was a cattle rancher, and he told me he never eats beef. Never. He says, I sell it, but I don't eat it. And I didn't ask for too many details as to why he didn't eat beef. Okay. Well, that's one problem, one technique, administering antibiotics to livestock and poultry. And careless use of antibiotics is a serious problem, not only in agriculture, but in general. I'm reading all the time now about drug-resistant bacteria and careless use of antibiotics and how the bacteria are getting stronger and stronger. And scientists keep having to find new drugs to fight these new drug-resistant bacteria. And one of these days, we may get caught with some kind of germ that we cannot fight with drugs. And then a lot of people are going to be in trouble. Well, there's another example of plant and animal husbandry techniques in the next paragraph, line 24. Phoebe, can you read there, please?
Another recent study shows that bioengineered plants may be hazardous to the ecosystem. A strain of corn has been made resistant to pests by the addition of bacterial genes. This strain now makes up 25% of the American corn crop. According to the study, pollen from the corn kills caterpillars of the monarch butterfly, a harmless and beautiful species. If plant bioengineering is so destructive to butterflies, what other unexpected problems might it cause?
Okay, that's a very good question. So another recent study deals with bioengineering or bioengineered plants. Paul, can you explain that term?
Well, bioengineering means that we make adjustments to the biological structure of a plant or an animal. In this case, they've used genes from bacteria and incorporated those with the genes for the corn plant, and so they've made a new strain.
Okay, and a strain is like a type of a plant. That sounds very strange to me. Taking things from the cells of a bacterium and adding them to the cells of a corn plant. Maybe we're not supposed to do that kind of thing. I'm not sure. But doing this with plants, bioengineering, may be hazardous to the ecosystem and may be dangerous for the ecosystem. Phoebe, can you explain that term, ecosystem?
Well, the ecosystem is basically the system of ecology that we live in. Ecology has to do with the relationship between plants or animals and their environment. So the ecosystem is kind of the whole relationship of the plants and animals and living organisms.
Okay, the system of the natural world, all the plants and animals and their environment out there. Well, what was the benefit, Paul, that they got by bioengineering this corn?
Well, it was resistant to pests, bugs and other things that would usually eat the corn and reduce the yield, reduce how much they were able to grow. Those pests were no longer a problem once they added these other genes.
Okay, that's the benefit, that it would resist pests and increase the yield and the quality. But what is the problem, the unintended consequence, Phoebe?
Well, according to line 33, it says that the pollen from this corn kills caterpillars of the butterfly.
Okay, and pollen is kind of like a dust-like material that flowering plants give off that get blown by the wind or carried by insects to fertilize other plants. And it's a very important part of a plant. And the monarch butterfly is a beautiful butterfly. Paul, have you ever seen a monarch butterfly? They're kind of a gold and black color, right?
Bright orange, really, more than
Okay.
bright orange and black. Beautiful.
They really are. And I think perhaps they consume the pollen.
Yes, they do. Just like bees use pollen to make honey, butterflies use the pollen as their food, and so they go from plant to plant, and it picks up on their legs and on their wings.
But maybe that's, I'm just thinking, the monarch, I think, lives on milkweed, but maybe the pollen just gets into their system somehow accidentally. And what it does is it kills them. It kills the caterpillars of the monarch butterfly. And so there are going to be fewer butterflies around. And it's not that losing butterflies is so dangerous to humans, but what is the warning that we can take from this fact that butterflies are being killed by bioengineered corn, Phoebe?
Well, I think the thought is if it can kill these species, then what might it be doing to humans? We might not even see the effects for a while, but if it can kill these animals, it's probably doing something strange to us as well.
Or to other important parts of the ecosystem, and we really don't know. Time will tell. And this type of corn now makes up 25% of the American corn crop. It's being used a lot because you don't have to spray pesticides on it. It is resistant to pests all by itself because of the bioengineering. Yvonne, any comments? We've got two big paragraphs to talk about there. I'm sorry.
我们来看25行，讲到这个bioengineered， 它就是经过这个生物工程学的这个科技所制造的，或者是所交配出来的这些植物。然后到下面26行 hazardous 就是非常危险的 ecosystem 就是这个生态系统。27行 strain of something 就是这个种类 28行 pest 就是害虫，各种害虫，33行 pollen 是花粉，34行 caterpillars 是这个毛毛虫。
Okay, this sounds really kind of scary and depressing. I think we need a little bit of a break and a laugh, so let's listen to this.
You are such a famous scientist.
Well, yes, thank you.
And no one can dispute the amazing benefits modern science has bestowed on the developed world.
Yes, well-
Oh, faster, cheaper, better transportation.
Yes.
Communication, medical care, and much, 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 much more.
Yes, also in the field of food production,
Right.
Science has had a huge impact on yields and cost and quality.
Oh, very huge. That's right. Oh, you guys, you scientists are so successful.
Well, not always.
What do you mean, not always?
Well, some recent findings suggest that some high-tech animal and plant husbandry techniques cause unintended and unwelcome consequences.
What kind of consequences?
Uh,
What do you mean?
Well, one technique was to administer antibiotics to livestock and poultry.
Oh, yes, I read about that.
Yes, we wanted to encourage faster growth and fight disease.
Oh, very successful. Yes, congratulations.
Well, it worked, but now some of the bacteria, they survive the antibiotics and become resistant to them.
Oh, no, that doesn't sound good at all.
Yes, and they also become resistant to human medicine. So if people get the disease, well, the standard treatments have no effect.
You mean there's nothing they can do?
Well, not yet.
Oh, dear. What else?
Well, a strain of corn has been made resistant to pests.
Oh,
by the-
yes, very successful, I understand.
Well, we added bacterial genes, and this strain now makes up 25% of American corn.
That's so great.
Yes, but the pollen from the corn kills caterpillars of the monarch butterfly.
Those beautiful, harmless species of butterflies?
Yes.
Oh, well, if plant bioengineering is so destructive to butterflies, what other unexpected problems might it cause?
Well, we don't know yet.
Oh!
That sounded like a real scientist. I wonder where they found him. I don't know yet. Well, we don't want to scare people, but it is something to think about. And these are just two examples. I think there are many more things, Paul, that are being done to try to improve plant and animal cost, yield, quality.
Oh, certainly, because that's the only way that most farmers can survive in their business. Farming generally has a very low profit margin. It's very hard to come out ahead, and so they have to try anything they can to get ahead.
It's a very competitive business. Yvonne, do you think that people here in Taiwan are aware of some of these problems and give much thought to them?
I don't think we are exposed to much of the information. I think this kind of articles will be more appreciated, should be more appreciated.
Okay, I know one way that you can improve your yield on watermelons. I've heard of this being done here. You know, you pick your watermelon out of the field and just inject some water into it. And it increases the weight. And so if you're selling your watermelon by weight, why, you've just improved your yield tremendously with a little injection of water.
Huh.
Low tech. Okay, we're going to continue our discussion of headline news in the next program, so be sure to join us. Thanks for being with us today, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.